Hi, and welcome to this tutorial in which I'm going to show you how to make a simple pleated face covering. A lot of people have been asking me for pattern and instructions, and I finally decided just to put together a little video to show you the mask that I've been making. There are loads out there, and I'm sure there are others very similar, but this is the simple technique that I'm using to make some masks for myself, my family and my friends. So you can see here I've got two sizes. The larger one tends to fit my husband slightly better, and that's based on a 7.5 inch square of fabric, and the one below is the one that I've been using, and that's based on a 7-inch square of fabric. These masks are made from a very lightweight Tana lawn cotton, and they seem to be a little bit more breathable than some of the other cottons that I've tried using. So it might be an idea before you get started and before you cut your fabric, just to hold it up in front of your mouth, imagining that it's a face covering, and just see how easy it is for you to breathe through it, and you'll get a bit of an idea. So let's get started. So at the moment I'm tending to prefer quite neutral fabrics for my face coverings. So this is just a grey fabric, and I'm actually using it so that the wrong side is the right side, because the right side is actually a bit darker and I prefer the look of the back of the fabric. So I'm going to use this as my right side. So here I've got two 7-inch squares cut out, and then I've got two pieces of elastic. The elastic is 8 inches long, and it's a 3mm elastic. It's a flat corded elastic, and it's quite soft around the ears. I've been wearing masks now on and off during the day, and I haven't encountered any soreness around my ears, so this is quite a nice elastic. Some of the thicker elastics or some of the stronger elastics can be a little bit less comfortable around the ears. So I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine now to show you how I sew this, because I sew it in quite a simple process. But just to let you know, my mask does have an opening at the bottom, so I could put a filter into it if I wanted to, and you could also put a nose wire into the top of it and do an extra line of stitching to secure the nose wire in place. I find that it sits really comfortably without the nose wire, but some people I know prefer the nose wire, so you could opt that in as well. But I'm just going to take you over to the sewing machine and show you how I sew round it in one simple movement, attaching the elastic as I go. Okay, so we're over at the machine, and I've positioned my fabric underneath my presser foot so that the edge of the fabric is lined up with the edge of the presser foot, and so that I'm about 1.5 to 2 inches from this bottom edge. And I'm going to be sewing all the way around the square, stopping on the same side, but I will be leaving a gap between my start and stopping point, which will be the turning through opening. It's just a really simple way of constructing the mask to turn through. So I'm just going to start by doing a few stitches, right sides together obviously on my fabric. Let me just show you. So the less vivid side is on the inside. That's what I want as my right side. And so I'm just going to do a few stitches in reverse. And then I'm going to sew all the way down to the bottom, stopping just when this edge lines up with the inner part of my presser foot. One more stitch, and there we can see. So that's my measure, and that's about the same distance from the edge as the width of my presser foot from the needle. So at this point I'm just going to pivot, and then before I put the presser foot back down, I'm just going to fold open the two layers of fabric. There's a little thread in there, just take that out of the way, and I'm just going to slide my elastic up into the top, and then I'm just going to lay the fabric back down on top of itself again. I'm going to lower the presser foot, and I'm just going to go over that piece of elastic. Just reverse there for a bit of extra security. And then I'm just stopping about 1 inch away from the bottom. And I'm just going to bring around my piece of elastic that's attached at the top, and I'm now just going to slide that into position like that. Drop the fabric back down, hold it with my finger, and you'll notice I reversed over it again just to make sure that it's secure. lift the presser foot, pivot round. When you're securing that elastic, do make sure that it's not twisted in any way, because you want it to be sitting nice and flat underneath. I'm going to come down the whole of this side without stopping, because it's going to be the top of my face mask, face covering. Let's go on the one extra stitch that I need, and then I'm going to lift the presser foot and pivot round. And then I'm going to grab my second piece of elastic and do exactly the same thing. So pop in the elastic, right up in the top seam, drop my presser foot back down, reverse stitch to secure the elastic, and then I'm just going to go inside and just hold that elastic down the bottom ready. When you come down the second side, you haven't got as much access into the face mask. Just check that that elastic is sitting flat. Double stitch on that elastic, and then this is the side that we started on, so I'm just going to pivot and I'm going to stitch about the same distance that I stitched the other side, so that's about 2 inches on this one, and then I will reverse at the end. So there we are, we've gone round, we've joined the two squares together, and we have attached the elastic all in one go. So I'll take you over to the worktop and show you the next stage. So I've trimmed off any excess threads at my opening, and I'm now just going to turn this through. And in the corners, I will be pulling out the corners using the elastic. You could put a knitting needle down inside if they don't come out particularly square or as you hoped. Little thread there. You could, of course, not sew it my way, and you could, of course, just pin everything before you get to the sewing machine. But having made an awful lot of these, I got very competent at being able to insert the elastic exactly when I needed to. So there we go. So I'm now going to give that a really good press. So I'm just going to lift up my ironing mat and bring my little iron over. And always make sure when you're ironing that you roll the seams right out to the edge, so that you're not trapping any fabric in. Give it a twist. Give it a really good press. And then at the top, well, as it's at the top at the moment, I've got my opening, and I'm just going to press those raw edges into the inside, like so, and iron across. They can obviously be stitched down, although when I have made a few of these in a bit of a hurry, because I've needed to wear them very quickly, I've skipped that step, and they do still seem to be okay. It stays in quite nicely. So there we are, we've got one square nicely pressed, and our opening is at the bottom. So I'll just move the iron out of the way, and I shall just move the ironing board out of the way. Okay, so I've got to put some pleats in, and I think it's the pleats that people do find a little bit tricky. So I'm just going to grab myself a ruler and a friction pen, and a friction pen is one of these pens just like this, and it's erasable when you put the iron over the top of the markings, so I can mark away and not worry about the finished project. So I've got my ruler, and I'm going to have my mask so that the top of the mask is at the bottom, just because it's easier to show you the markings with my ruler. And I'm going to measure some outside points first. And the first measurement is going to be 1.5 inches from the top. So I'm going to put a little mark at the side there. And then the second mark is going to be 3.5 inches. So put a mark there. And then the last mark is going to be 5.25 inches, like so. So I've got 3 marks down one side, and I'm just going to transfer them over to the other side. So that's 1.5, 3.5, and 5.25. And those marks represent my edge of my pleat. But I need to know where to bring my pleat to. So down the centre of my mask, so I'm just lining the ruler up with one edge, I'm going to measure 2 3/4, and I'm going to put a bigger mark there, and I'm going to measure 4 3/4 and put a bigger mark there, and I'm going to measure 6. Now, even if you've made the slightly bigger square to make the larger size, the same markings work. So you don't need to worry about moving those markings. Okay, so I'm going to twist it back round so it is the right side up, and I'm just going to grab my pincushion, bring that into view, and I'm now going to pinch the mask, face covering, where those side markings are like this to create a pleat, and then I'm just going to fold that down to that middle mark. And I'm going to put a pin in one side, and then I shall just put a pin in the other side. There we go, so that's the first pleat in. And then I'm going to do exactly the same. So I'm going to grab the fabric on my second marks, and I'm going to bring that fold down to the second mark in the middle of my fabric. And when you're pinning, make sure that you're keeping all of your side edges nice and straight. And then there's going to be one more to do. This one's going to be quite close to the bottom. So I'm just going to grab those pinch points and just fold it down. And that's a smaller fold, that bottom one. That's the bit that's going to be underneath your chin. So it doesn't need as much bagging, if that makes sense. You actually need the space up here in front of your nose. So I'm just going to twist that round like so. And so there's my mask all pinned and ready to go. So now I will be stitching down the sides, keeping the pins in place for as long as possible so these pleats don't slip out. And I will be using the edge of the presser foot with the edge of the mask, the face covering, so that my stitching will be just like you can see here on this one. It's going to be just a bit inside from the edge. And I'm just going to do one line of stitching down, and then I will reverse back up the whole way. You could, of course, pivot at the bottom and then stitch back down, whichever you find easiest. But it's just a simple line of stitching coming down there and a simple line of stitching coming down there. So having stitched those 2 lines in place, I've trimmed away all my threads, and I've now just got a few markings that I'd like to get rid of. So I'm just going to bring the iron over and just use the iron to press those pleats into place. And sadly, when you wash masks, it is a really good idea to press the pleats back into place afterwards, because it really does help them hold their shape when they're covering your face. And there we have it. So if I wanted to put a nose wire in now, I would just open it up from the bottom and slide it all the way down to the top, and then just do a line of stitching across the top to hold that wire in place. And if I wanted to, I would now also just top stitch those little opening bits at the bottom, so that that's not going to come loose. But that won't come loose, it will stay as it is. If you're really bothered, you can always fold over to check that your 2 sides are exactly the same. Mine's probably about 3 millimeters out, but I'm quite happy with that. And there's one simple face covering. So remember, that's a 7-inch size that I wear, and I've made a 7.5-inch square size to fit my husband. Don't forget, if you want to tag us, it's at Made and Making on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Thank you very much. Bye.